Welcome to Regulate This, a really unfiltered podcast.
I am Tracie Bear, and I'm here with my lovely host, Leila Shaver, who is the guru of compliance.
Ooh, guru. I like that.
You've moved from nerd to guru, but either way, you know your ish.
That is for damn sure. So I'm excited today because we're talking about cybersecurity horror stories. So really focusing on an area that continues to be one of the top 5 areas of concern for the regulators, but for whatever reason tends to be a area that a lot of firms struggle with.
You know, we see it a lot with the people that will call us to inquire about our services, just the different things that they've encountered. And some of them are definitely horror stories and things that, you know, once we hear them, we feel for, you know, the potential new clients that are calling in. But a lot of them are things that could have been prevented. They were preventable, and many were foreseeable. So, Leila, what do you do? Or maybe it's better to ask, what should you not do? What should you avoid doing if you want to be in compliance and not be one of the people that looks like the kid from Home Alone that's screaming with their hands on their face because something has, you know, breached their security?
So, I mean, listen, there are several things that firms need to keep in mind when it comes to cybersecurity. First, make sure it's an area that you're talking about, right? A lot of firms, large and small, don't necessarily have an internal person that's tech savvy, that's responsible for the technology infrastructure of the firm, that is mindful of the cybersecurity policies. And so if you don't, you need to find an outsourced provider. I think that's first and foremost. A lot of firms don't have someone internally. They don't have an outsourced provider. That's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is not reviewing your cybersecurity policy or even having one, right? Your cybersecurity policy is not just about, you know, what are the requirements when it comes to password strength or multi-factor authentication. It also talks about what happens if there's an incident. So that is if an email address gets hacked, if someone private information takes personally identifiable information, non-public information, there has to be some sort of incident response plan. And you can't respond to an incident if you have no one on your team that is responsible for cybersecurity, and if you don't have anyone outsourced that's responsible for cybersecurity. So mistakes 1 and 2 kind of go hand in hand. And mistake number 3 is about disclosure, right? It's if you've had a incident where data was taken or a system or email address or something was compromised and hacked, what have you done to notify your clients and prospects if their data has been compromised? What are you doing to safeguard them? A lot of firms, that's kind of mistake number 3, is failing to disclose them and taking additional remediation action to resolve those issues.
Oh my gosh, you've said a lot that we need to unpack. So the first thing I heard is get a professional. Don't trust Dr. Google, who tells you that you're either dehydrated or have a brain tumor. Don't, and think that all of a sudden you now are the equivalent of somebody with a degree in computer engineering or computer technology or something like that. Don't ask your kid who seems to be tech savvy and think that that's enough. Don't ask your mom who plays Candy Crush nonstop and you think, well, she has to have some knowledge. Instead, it's get somebody that really knows what they're doing to avoid some of these pains. But if you can't, or you don't, or you haven't, my guess is everybody can, but they choose not to, right? Because we all have the ability to do things when we absolutely need to. And sometimes it might be a challenge or stretch, but it's finding that path. So let's avoid the fact that some people will say they can't, because we know that's not reality. But people that have chosen not to have to take precautions should something happen. And so you're giving them kind of the keys to the kingdom, that here are the things that you have to avoid. Here are the things that you have to do. Now, what happens if I had a lapse in judgment and I trusted Dr. Google, or I trusted my teenager that seems to run circles around me with all things technology, or my mom who is an avid Candy Crush player and is at a level beyond, human capability that I thought about. Somebody that is on more than I am technology-wise, that I think might be able to help. So all of those people, Dr. Google, my kid who's tech savvy, and my mom who's on Facebook and Candy Crush a lot, they've all failed me. So now what? What does that mean for me? I feel like we should be playing the music like to add the fear around what happens when you set yourself up for failure.
I think this is one of those cases where you'll get that side eye look from the regulators, because it's like, I don't care if your mom plays Candy Crush. I don't care if your teenager seems to know more than you. You're a damn professional. You're in a financial services industry where you are managing highly sensitive data, people's social security numbers, date of birth, legal addresses, beneficiary information, account information. And that's who your backup is your kid or your mother or Dr. Google. Like, they're going to look at you like you're a freaking moron. And frankly, they should. Because you have a lot of responsibility. You have access to a lot of sensitive data that people would love to get their hands on in order to steal identities, in order to steal money. And you're relying on Dr. Google. That's negligent at best, right? You're not living up to your fiduciary responsibility of doing what's in the best interest of the client, if that is who you have as your backup and your resources for when there is an incident. And it's just not going to be regulatorily sufficient.
Preach to the choir. You're telling me exactly what I don't want to hear, but I need to hear, right? Isn't that the reality? Is being able to come to somebody that knows what they're talking about, and they're willing to sometimes make you uncomfortable by telling you the things that you don't want to hear, but you have to hear, because if you're not doing the right things, you will get caught. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And when you do, especially if you've done nothing to mitigate, you've done nothing to resolve it, you've done nothing to show that you aren't a bad actor and doing this intentionally, you're going to get stuck holding the bag, right? So what types of things happen to people that, don't have cybersecurity practices to protect the people whose money they're investing? I mean, obviously there's a loss of trust that can happen, and which is frightening, because then your business starts to go away and so does your reputation, and that's very hard to get back. But what can happen with the regulators? Let's say I decide that I'm just going to trust those people because I've convinced myself that I don't have enough money to pay somebody, or I don't have the bandwidth to have one more person to deal with that's outsourced. So what happens to me now that I've decided to just play it fast and loose and just see what comes of it?
I mean, you're definitely looking at escalation to enforcement. You're looking at potential fines, which would become a disclosable event for your firm and on any individuals who are licensed and are ultimately personally held responsible. So the repercussions are steep. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind too is a lot of these hacks, these data breaches, they're fairly unsophisticated, right? So I sent a phishing email and someone clicked on it. I didn't have MFA set up and someone was able to guess my website because, oh, by the way, I haven't changed my website in a decade, and my website was part of a different data breach and is available on the dark web. So we've had clients where it wasn't even a breach through their firm, it was through a client's personal Gmail account. Right? Someone accessed the client's personal Gmail account that Gmail account was connected to their Schwab account, and they were able to reach out to Schwab and fraudulently change the contact information for the accounts. And the good news is the client figured out their account was hacked, and the advisor immediately reached out to Schwab to reverse any changes to the contact information. But imagine if they hadn't. This person would have accessed those accounts, would have diverted all of the information to the new contact information they set up, and would have been able to essentially abscond that money in those accounts. That's serious. That's serious. But how did the advisor know what to do? Right? And that's because they had a cybersecurity policy. They'd been trained on what are the steps you need to take when there is an incident. Because sometimes that incident's not communicated to the advisor. Sometimes it's a client's services specialist. Sometimes it's an ops person or an admin or even the receptionist. Everyone needs to be trained on how to respond.
Well, and you bring up a good point too, because even though these aren't necessarily the most savvy schemes that the hackers come up with, very intelligent people, very savvy people fall prey to them daily. I mean, I know I've worked in environments where professionals that are licensed CPAs, are licensed attorneys, are licensed financial planners, fall prey to something that when you read it on its face, most of us have the moment where we smack our head and say, "Nope, how could we have not seen that this was something fraudulent? How did we not get our hair on the back of our neck to stand up?" But we're so busy doing so many things that oftentimes it's a cursory read, a cursory review of whatever was sent, and let me get this pee off my plate and finish it as fast as possible without thinking through, this sounds too good to be true, or this is really weird, or why would my employer ever ask me for X, or why would my client ever ask for Y? And they don't think to follow up and make sure that it's real. So do you have any crazy things that you've seen, any stories that you can think of, or anything that you've seen even in coming out that people have gotten sanctioned for or have been audited and had challenges because of when looking at cybersecurity? Have you seen anything come through besides that Schwab that's, something you wouldn't anticipate somebody fell prey to?
Oh, absolutely. I tell our clients it's not if, it's when there's a data breach, when there's a compromise. So we've had clients whose emails have been hacked. We've had clients who, I mentioned about the client email account being hacked. We've had firms where their data was held hostage, right? I tell people all the time, City of Atlanta, their data was held hostage, right? You have to pay this many millions of dollars to get your data back. It's happening. And, financial services companies have all of this sensitive data. They're a number one big old red bullseye on their back for hackers. They want to get access, but they also know what little remedies, protections, safeguards a lot of advisory firms utilize. And that's why we see a lot of these kind of basic, kind of unsophisticated ways in which they're getting access. Do you have multi-factor setup? When you're looking at a lot of the tools you're using day-to-day in your business, whether it's a CRM, Schwab, a financial planning tool, they're web-based. You're probably accessing these through your telephone, right? Your cell phone, not a rotary phone like what was around when I was a kid. But like your cell phone, your tablet, your laptop, are these password protected? Do you have screen locks on them? Is your password sophisticated? Do you have multi-factor authenticator set up? What are you doing to make sure that someone can't physically access those devices? And because that certainly happened with clients where someone left their laptop at the airport, it wasn't locked, there was no kind of password to protect access to it, and someone was able to log in with no password, and they were able to access all the tools and applications that were open on the laptop. You know, we see that with cell phones where people don't put any sort of like PIN or pattern lock or facial recognition or whatever to lock their device, and people get entry to it. It's even things like, you know, these days a lot of people are in hybrid or remote positions and they're working from home. Who has access to your home? Who has access to your home office? Do they have access to your computer? Are you already logged in? A lot of these applications, you can log in without putting in your password again for a period of 7 days, 30 days, whatever the case may be. So anyone who accesses your computer can log in to these web-based applications. And these are all real-life stories that have been the kind of entry points for bad actors to gain access to data.
You know, you bring up some great points on things that people can do to remedy the situation too. Having multi-factor authentication, having policies and procedures in place, training and ensuring that the people that not only are here now, but future employees have that. So keeping a training log as well, so that you make sure everybody is aware of what's going on, and even setting up times annually to retrain to ensure that if anything's changed, or even just as a refresher, that everybody has access and knows how to grab the policy if they need to make sure that they're adhering to it. Is there anything else that we're forgetting that we should mention to kind of cool down what we've talked about so far? You know, we've allowed people to realize that whether it's happened to them or not yet, it likely will. We've talked about the things they should be looking for, and now we're getting into the things to do to resolve it. So, or at least mitigate it so that you can prove that you're doing things to stop whatever has gone on and change whatever is moving forward. So anything beyond the multi-factor authentication, beyond having a policy that's being used and trained and updated regularly, anything beyond those types of things that we should make people aware of?
Yeah, so the good news is there's a lot of solutions out there, right? This isn't like 20, 30 years ago where there was maybe one company around that did something specific. There are a lot of options out there that have a variety of different features, and there's a spectrum based on cost too. So there's very cost-effective tools out there, and there's some very expensive tools out there as well. You know, I think looking at the multiple vendors that are out there to find one that's a good fit for your firm, at a minimum that does some monitoring, some, you know, testing of your staff by sending like fake phishing emails, things like that to see if they'll do it, sending training modules for them. There's also a variety of free resources that you can find where you can require your team to do cybersecurity related training. So I think that's all important. But I mentioned before, you know, it's not a matter of if, but when. So one of the big things I tell our clients to do is get cyber insurance. The same way you have E&O, errors and omissions insurance for your firm in case someone breaches their fiduciary duty, performs negligence or fraud or whatever the case may be, why don't you have cyber insurance, right? You're utilizing so many web-based tools, cloud-based tools. Get yourself some cyber insurance, right? So that if there is an incident, if there is an issue, you've got that cyber insurance to back you up and support you and cover costs, frankly, associated with an event.
That's such a good thing to put on people's radar too, because there's so many different platforms that you can go to ensure you're getting the proper insurance as well that works for you. A lot of times anymore, even your PEOs might offer something like that. But realizing that when you're looking at those policies, it's not just a blanket. It covers a lot. There's the ability to cover the extortion and the ransomware that you talked about. That's something that you can talk to a broker about. There's theft recovery. There's everything from the incident response and helping should you have to defend yourself against something like this. There's the liability that you may have, both with the privacy and confidentiality. There's electronic data restoration, because a lot of times when hackers come in and steal information, They don't leave things in a tidy, neat order that just puts it right back. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to be done on the back end. There might be business interruption or extra expense associated with this. And oftentimes, all of those things, along with the theft and the social engineering and the ransom and all of that stuff, can be put into one policy rather than being nickeled and dimed to death. And you can get policies that can really help you mitigate this loss as well, and help your clients mitigate as well.
No, I agree. And I think, one of the other things that firms need to start thinking about, there are a lot of practices that are quite common to our industry that just don't work anymore, right? So it's been common practice to allow advisors to use their personal cell phones, for example, to communicate with clients. You're having issues from a books and records perspective with that, with kind of this unauthorized texting or communicating via unauthorized methods. But you also have the issue of cybersecurity, right? Because they're utilizing personal devices. You haven't put any sort of controls on that device. They're just kind of using that to communicate. And really what we're telling clients is get a business device for your team. Enroll that device into your cybersecurity policies for your firm. We do that for our law firm, frankly, Tracie, right? We use a third party who manages our Microsoft program. Every device has to be enrolled in it. When they're enrolled, we set up all of their antivirus. We make sure they get all the patches and updates. And then if they are no longer with our firm, we also are able to remote wipe those devices. So utilizing a third party who can do those kinds of things and also make sure that any unauthorized devices are kind of blocked from your systems, those are all things that you should look into doing. And listen, I know at the end of the day, I know what I'm hearing from advisors. It's cha-ching, 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 right? Like, how much is all of this going to cost me? And my answer is, how much do you think it's going to cost you if you don't have these things in place?
Exactly. You're even talking about cell phones, and cell phones are these inanimate objects that move freely. It's amazing. I watched a study on bacteria and the things that have the most bacteria. And one of the things that has the most bacteria is a cell phone, because people take it with them everywhere, including the restroom, right? And think about that. You're at a conference, or you're at a meeting, or heck, you're at the movies, and you have your cell phone with you. It goes into the bathroom. It goes when you hopefully wash your hands. Everybody should do that. But it goes there with you as well and sits on the sink. And then you're grabbing it again before you sometimes have that paper towel or that blow dryer that's going to clean off your hands. But think of how many times you have an opportunity to leave it. How many times you have an opportunity to walk away from it and somebody else has the opportunity to grab it. And think about that. The cell phones now, the majority of them are not the penny flip phones of my dad's era. Most of these are smartphones that are basically our life in a little rectangular object that have everything on there. Our personal lives, our professional lives. People can grab it and walk away with it, and it's challenging to get it back. You might have a Find My iPhone on there. You might have other things. But if the phone gets shut down or it's taken offline, you'll have a hard time finding it. And all of that data, unless you're able to wipe it, stays intact. And the person has an opportunity, depending on how savvy they are, to transfer it, to make a copy of it, a clone of it. They have so many things that they can do at their disposal. And how many advisors do you have? Some firms have hundreds that all have their own device that's walking and moving around and at places that they probably want their clients to know that they're at, and places they may not. But their data is going everywhere with them. So to your point, if you don't have some type of a network that you're using internally that you have all of your people subscribed to, and you're able to take that off immediately and wipe the phone, you're able to have things encrypted, you're able to have every conversation stored, you're setting yourself up for failure and trouble. Without those things in place, it's like giving your kids the password and the code to your bank account and saying, now go to the pool and tell your friends what I've told you and see what happens, right? I mean, because really you have no way of knowing what they're going to do with that. It's, our kids will run around and tell stories that you're like, they told you that, huh? And you can't believe that they said what happened at home or what mommy said or so on and so forth. But oftentimes with our advisors, even though they're not our children, they're our employees, they have as much access as our family has to information that's so near and dear to us and to our clients, and they're exposed to all of it. And they're carrying it with them in their pocket and potentially leaving it in the bathroom or leaving it at the sink or having it drop out at the movie theater or in an Uber. I had somebody call a few weeks ago saying, I left my laptop and my phone in an Uber. I mean, that stuff happens. It's real. It's life. You think you have everything when you're jumping out to get in for the airport and you just leave it. Unfortunately, we only can control ourselves. We can't control those hundreds of people or tens of people or sometimes 1,000 people that have all of this data that's moving around with them every day. So you giving them these keys of things that they can do to protect themselves, because it's unrealistic to say people aren't going to use their cell phone. It's unrealistic to say nobody is going to access data away from the office. All of that stuff is entirely unrealistic in this day and age. People expect us to have quick access to information, and we expect our advisors to have quick access to their clients' information and be able to be available as needed, even when they're not in the office. So if we're going to have those expectations, we damn well better invest in protecting what we're expecting.
I absolutely agree. And you're right. Given how much technology we use every day, right? I remember when I first started my career, there was no scanning a document and being able to search the document, right? It was just a flat copy. The quality was horrible. We didn't even have color scanning back then. I mean, it was a whole nother realm when it came to technology. But, now with so many tools and resources and web-based applications and so many ways to access it via cell phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, it's amazing how far technology's come, but cybersecurity continues to be a huge area of deficiency for a large amount of firms. And I don't care how big or small you are. I see multi-billion AUM firms that have the same cybersecurity as your solo practitioner state registered RIA. Is actually really bad. So, again, as technology and AI develops and becomes more and more sophisticated, cybersecurity continues to be an area that we just need to take more seriously. With the cybersecurity continuing to be one of the SEC's top 5 areas of focus, this new division they've built with a focus on emerging technologies and AI, it is a focal point, and it's time to take the hint and start reviewing your cybersecurity. And let me just say, not all compliance people are tech people. There is a difference between kind of your regulatory compliance and doing your day-to-day testing and cybersecurity compliance. And you need to make sure, whether internal or external, you have an expert that's watching it for you.
Thank you so much for sharing your information and your knowledge, Leila. I think, the biggest thing is, in order to make a change in human behavior, remember that you have to live in reality. You have to see it for what it is. And I think one of the things you've highlighted clearly throughout today's podcast episode is it's not if it's going to happen, it's when. It's not I have one person or I have 200 people. It's the fact that even just you are exposing your clients to potential catastrophe, because we're all using technology in a different way than we ever have before. To your point, I remember the days of the VPN and dial-up internet where you'd get kicked out many more times than you actually were in it. And so it didn't make sense. So most people just didn't use it. And they were like, I'll just drive back to the office. Those days are done. People don't do that stuff anymore. And so when you're thinking about it, as we've been able to level up technology, we have to level up the protections around the technology. So thank you so much for sharing with our audience and helping them find ways to protect themselves, their business, their money, and their clients. And reminding everybody that good compliance is good business. So with that being said, I think we've shown them what is happening. We've told them what to look out for. We've told them ways in which they can mitigate it and things that they can do in order to not fall prey to hackers and to auditors that are making sure that you're putting protections in place. And I think, if they have more questions, if it's something that they need outsourced, they can always obviously look at us, look at our compliance university to learn more if they don't know how to navigate this complex world of compliance and the regulatory guidance that's out there. And there are lots of other opportunities and other outsourced organizations that they can look at as well. Remember, as we've stated throughout this, good compliance is good business. We're here if you need us. But regardless, even if you're doing it on your own, doing nothing is the same as doing something. You're looked at the same way. Doing nothing, an act or an omission. Failure to act is also acting. You're choosing not to. So they have everything they need to start something today. So make sure that you're tuning in to Regulate This to find more tips and tricks like this to avoid steep fines, to avoid reputation destruction, to avoid loss of client and loss of employees that feel like you're not doing enough to protect them and protect their clients. So tune in to Regulate This on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere that you're listening to your podcast. Subscribe today.